I'll just thank you all for joining us today for our last official virtual information session. Not our last meeting of the year, as I'll get to in just a second. We've decided to do something a little bit different for December. But I just always am appreciative that everyone attends these and hopefully gets something out of them. We're always very open to your feedback and would love to hear more. I am Landon Solano, Communications Specialist for Forward Service Corporation. You may know me by now. If not, I put together the newsletters as well as host these lunch and learns. So if you ever have any questions about attendance, recordings, any of the materials surrounding these sessions, you can always reach out to me at lsolano@fse-corp.org. Okay, so this is our last topic of the year, which we'll be talking about internet availability and affordability with the Affordable Connectivity Program. I'll get to that in just a minute, but I want to just set the stage for next month. We are going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a partner roundtable with all of you, those of you that can and would like to attend, where we're going to invite you to speak. You can give us your thoughts on how these lunch and learns are going, these virtual information sessions, if there are topics you'd love to hear, open to feedback, and just general partnership questions or comments. We're going to have a bunch of our staff invited to it so that we can bring up conversations and hopefully start to address anything that needs to be addressed, or just start to develop some pretty cool ideas on how we can further our partnerships with one another. So we know December, this time of year, is always kind of tricky for everyone, but we hope you can attend. If not, you can always reach out to us. We have our feedback forms, but we're also all very open to having an open dialogue with you over email or the phone. Okay, let's get to, I forgot to mention, today's session is being recorded. It will be provided to you on Friday of this week. That's tomorrow. A PDF of today's slide deck will be also provided, as well as a list of our FSC offices across Wisconsin. So if you need to get in touch with any of us, if you have any questions about our programs, our services, you can find someone in your local area. I will also provide all of the information that Keela, our speaker today, would love to share with you. So look for all of that information tomorrow. Forward Service Corporation, we serve individuals by meeting them where they are, trying to take away the obstacles that get in the way of high-wage, sustainable employment. We want you to know that we take every person that comes through our doors very seriously, and we'll do everything to treat them with the utmost respect and connect them with the resources they need in order to succeed. So we hope that you'll think of us whenever you have someone that might be able to be served by the both of us. Today's topic is the Affordable Connectivity Program. And we're going to be covering a number of things today, including what it is, how to apply, how the ACP protects consumers. And I hope that we can really kind of dive into the human element of this, why internet is so important to people's lives and the disruption that it causes if they don't have affordable or available internet in their areas. So I'm very excited to introduce our speaker for today, Keila Hernandez-Ula. She is the Deputy Chief of Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division. Is a mouthful. You've got a big title here. Consumer and Government Affairs Bureau at the Federal Communications Commission. Keila, thank you so much for being here to speak with us on this topic today. I know that it's something that we hear a lot of in our offices, the ability to just be able to connect. We deal with people trying to search for jobs, apply for jobs, schedule interviews, which are often virtual these days. I would love to hear from you about why these things are important. And I will also hand it over to you to share your slide deck and introduce the Affordable Connectivity Program. So thank you, Keela, for being here. I am handing it over to you now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to kind of talk about what the Affordable Connectivity Program is. And as I'm talking, hopefully this will work, because sometimes, it could be, here we go. So what I am putting here on the screen right now is going to be the application for the Affordable Connectivity Program. So throughout the conversation, I'm also going to mention everything, what the program is, why it's so important, and what consumers can do. This is a two-step process, and I'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that means. But let's begin. So the Affordable Connectivity Program, this is something that came about. Congress has given the FCC $14.2 billion to run this program. And what the benefit is, it's consumers who are eligible can receive up to $30 a month off their internet bill. And if you work with anyone that's part of the tribal community that lives on tribal lands, that benefit goes up to $75 per month. And there are some additional benefits also to this program. So not all providers across the United States are participating in this program. I'll talk a little bit about the company's Near Me tool, which helps consumers find providers in their area. But I also want to mention that amongst those providers, and there's about 1,900 providers across the United States and the territories that are participating in this program. Amongst those, there are some that also have an additional benefit, which is a one-time benefit of up to $100 off what's called a discounted device. And that could be a laptop, desktop computer, or tablet that is purchased through that provider. If someone needs a device, this might be an option. The device is not free. Consumers have to pay anywhere between $10 and $50 towards the purchase price of that device. But if there's a household that needs it, that might be something you want to consider. And the reason I keep saying may want to consider is because you have to get this benefit once you're approved and the device from the same provider. So you can't, let's say you already have an internet service provider that you really like but doesn't offer the device, then you have to consider if you want to move over the benefit to someone that does offer the device, or perhaps obtain the device but not through the program. So that's kind of an overview of what this program is. As was mentioned before, a lot of services are moving online. And we at the FCC, especially under our chairwoman, Jessica Rosenworcel, realize that even now, not everyone does have access, but we're trying to let eligible consumers know why access is so important. Telehealth, a lot of schools now have hybrid. There are some schools there, and I just experienced this in a trip I went to New York, where the college had to close down due to bad weather. And so all the students are being told, please go home and just join your classes online. And that's just a snippet of why this is so important. There are a lot of services that are going online also. Things like, in some states I've heard, driver's license. For the most part, you can do the renewal online. Obviously, if you need to take a picture, you may have to come into the office. But if it's just, you need to update, a lot of those is now going online. So it's really important. And I can go on and on about this, but let's get back to why this is important and how to get this benefit, or how you're going to help others. The application is available at getinternet.gov. This is what you see here. There are still some consumers, as I said, that don't have access. So if that is a concern, they can also get a paper application mailed to their home. I will be mentioning the Universal Service Administrative Company, USAC for short. They do have a toll-free number. And again, after this, I will share all this information so that it could be distributed to all of you. USAC can be reached at 877-384-2575. That number is not just for I need an application, but it's also where you can get so much more information about the application process. So, but this, for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to be talking a lot about the online application. So this is what the landing page looks like for consumers that need this information in Spanish. The application is available in Spanish. They can go up here where it says English, drop-down menu will say en español, and then you could just click on that. I will talk later about what sign-in means, because consumers that are applying are asked to create an account. But as you can see here, the landing page also has a very good summary of what the program benefits are, which we just talked about, and how can I qualify. Now, how can a consumer qualify is really important. There are many ways. A consumer can qualify based on their income if it's at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. I do not have the table memorized, but I do know that for a household of 4, that could be, the income could be at or below $60,000 a year. And notice that I say household, not family. For the purposes of this program, a household is defined as a group of people who live together and share expenses. So they don't necessarily have to be related. A prime example could be roommates. If you live with someone not necessarily related, but you share expenses, then that is considered a household. If you have, same example, 2 roommates, but each pays his or her own expenses, then that is considered 2 households. And then, of course, here towards the bottom, you see the apply button is there twice. You can apply if you already know about the program, but you could read through it and then click apply here. So then the next screen is going to ask you for the home address where you will get your internet. That's pretty basic. If you have a different mailing address, then you'll click on the bottom and another drop-down screen will appear. This goes back to what I said before. This is where the definition of household fits. You will put the home address, that's where your household is, receiving the service. Email is really important for this. This is how the Universal Service Administrative Company, or USAC, provides you information about the status. Maybe they need more information. It's important to have an email address. I'm going to stop here and say, I have done signups where consumers don't have an email address. I can ask them, is there someone email address that you can borrow for the purposes of this program? And then some others, I have walked them to creating an email address. I am not advertising any particular service, but I have found that if you sign up somewhere for Google Mail, because it's an open platform, it's a little bit easier. If that is an option that you're taking with someone, please have them find a way to keep the email address and their password that they create. I always tell everyone that I help, if you call me tomorrow, I won't have that information, and that's to protect their privacy. A phone number is optional for the purposes of this program. Now, I mentioned before about, how do you qualify? But before even that, you're going to be asked to identify yourself. There's 2 things in this program. A consumer must identify themselves, and then once they pick one of the criteria for how they're eligible, then that will be the next thing they do. So that's the first part, 2 parts in the first part, and then the second part of the program is once you're approved to enroll for the benefit of your provider, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. So in this case, even before you're asked about how you're eligible, it'll ask you how you want to have your identity checked. A social security number for this program is not a must. USAC has told us that they strongly encourage it. If you have a social security number, to use the last 4 digits. It makes it easier to find the consumer in what's called the National Verifier, which is the database that is used to verify the consumer. So this person has said that yes, and they're using the last 4 digits of their social security number. And you see here to the right, it only asks you for the last 4 digits. But if you don't want to identify yourself using that, then there are other things you can use. A driver's license is pretty common as long as it's not expired, and so is a passport, could be from any country as long as it's not expired. But there are other things that you can use. Military ID is one of them. You see here on the bottom, it says other government ID. For some consumers, they want to use their birth certificate, which is government issued, and that could also be an option. No, please note that whatever you use, you will have to upload the proof. For if you use the last 4 digits of your social security number and you are already a Medicaid or supplemental nutrition assistance program a recipient, if you are found in the national verifier, it just makes it that easier. But not everyone has those programs, so we will talk a little bit more later about what qualifies the household. But first, it's important to identify yourself in this program. Full name as it appears on your identification. I will say here, true story, not the actual name. Peter Smith was applying for the benefit, put Pete Smith in this part of the application. Was told that there needed more information. When he called the FCC, he had called USAC, and USAC had explained to him that we need to use the name that it appears on your identification. But because he used Pete Smith on a lot of his bills, he thought, I can use Pete Smith, I'm recognized, but it must be your name. This also helps you find you in the national verifier. And of course, date of birth is pretty much standard. So here's where you get to the
part. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
We had a question in the chat before we get too far away from it, about whether or not you could use state ID as one of the identification methods.
State ID, such as perhaps a non-driver's license, or
I would assume so. Candy, do you want to?
That's exactly what I was saying. Just
okay, cool.
Like a regular state ID. Like I have a lot of people that have that, but they don't have a license. So, I mean, sometimes it's interchangeable, but I just wanted to verify just to put it out there.
Yes, they can definitely use it. And thank you for that question. Yes, as long as it's not expired. That's the main point. And because these do expire. So if you're applying today and it expires tomorrow, the recommendation would be get that document updated first and then apply so that you'll have a smooth transition into the application. But thank you for that question. So here we are where I mentioned before about Medicaid or SNAP. This person thinks that they have Medicaid or SNAP, so they click yes. And I mentioned about income, but there are other ways that a household can qualify for this program. And that includes if they're receiving supplemental security income, if they are receiving federal housing assistance. The most common would be Section 8, which is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, but there's also Section 202, Section 811. There are consumers that are veterans, and if they are and they're receiving their pension, that's another qualifier. For households that have children in K through 12, and they're qualified, the whole school is qualified and eligible for free lunch or free breakfast, called a community eligibility provision school, that qualifies. Some schools don't do that. If the individual family has to apply for and receiving the benefit of the free or reduced school lunch or school breakfast. There is also, if you're already receiving low-cost internet from a provider, that usually ranges between $9.95 to about $14.95. Could be more, could be less, depending on the provider, but that also qualifies the household. And then, of course, there is for consumers that already have Lifeline, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But Lifeline is another government program that provides households with a benefit of $9.25, which could be applied to their phone service or their internet. If the household qualifies for both Lifeline and ACP, they can use it towards the internet service. It has to come from the same provider. So it can't be two providers covering the same service. But this person has said yes. So when we click here, here's a person that has said no. And I mentioned all of these. I did forget to mention federal Pell Grant. So Pell Grant recipients also qualify for this program. So here are all the qualifiers. Now, whoops. So here are all the qualifiers. Note on the right-hand side that maybe I'm the head of household and I don't qualify for any of these programs. I may want to consider my income. And then the last box you see here where it says, I don't participate in any of these, but maybe there's a child or another adult in the household. This would be called an eligible dependent. And if that's the case, not only do I enter my information, but I also have to enter the eligible dependents information. And that's how the household qualifies. And it's one benefit per household. So let's say I receive Medicaid and my child receives school lunch, free or reduced school lunch. I only have to pick one, not both. So once you pick the program, you're going to be asked to review your information. It's really important that you make sure that everything that you have entered to date is accurate. If there is anything that's missing, let's say I forgot to add street as an example, it will come back that USAC will need more information. Once I verify that all this is correct, then I go to check my eligibility, which is down here. And again, this will be something that will be asked throughout the application process. Sometimes a consumer, even though they are in a qualifying program, maybe there's something that's missing, and then they will see a message from USAC saying, we need more information to see if you qualify, and that's what you're seeing here. It will explain what it is. In this case, with National Verifier couldn't find the person's address, and so they will be asked for more information. Now I'm going back to next after this is creating an account. I mentioned this before. On the landing page, there's going to be something that says sign in. If you don't have an account yet with USAC, this is where it's helpful to create an account. I'm not going to spend too much time here because creating an account is something that most of us that do go online are consistently doing. But for example, you may have a consumer that has never been on the internet before, so you may want to explain why they're creating an account, and it's so that they can go back into USAC's system and look at things like the status of their application, or maybe there's some information missing that they need to add. Most of the time when I help consumers, I have them use their email address as a username, but they can create a username and of course password following all the requests. I like to always, if I'm doing it for consumer, click on show password so that everything I'm typing in, I'm making sure that I'm typing it in correctly. Once all this information is in there, then they can go to create an account and then just proceed with the application process. Before we had the example of the person who was missing some information on their address. So they will be asked to confirm their location, and that's what this screen will look like. For some consumers on the right, you'll see a map where they can drop a pin. This is used by a lot of consumers where, for example, they live on tribal lands and it's much easier to drop a pin using latitude, longitude. And I'm getting a little sensitive here. I'm saying this is Kayla, not as FCC. I have worked with some consumers that don't have a permanent address and they're living in a shelter. So some of them can use the shelter address. There are some consumers that are living in other conditions where maybe it's a street corner that they can use as their address. All these things are allowed. They just have to drop a pin to say that maybe they're living on the corner of 11th and Apple Street, and this will be where they enter all that information. Sometimes consumers are asked to share more information in this, and they will be asked for, and this is where I mentioned before, it's 2 types of documents you need, one to identify yourself and one to identify the program. In this example here, when you use income as your qualifier, you will be asked to upload information. For most consumers, it's their previous year's tax forms that they can just upload and it will have their income. For some consumers, they may want to use, if they're receiving supplemental security income, that's what they'll put in there. For other consumers, any other type of statements, but it has to total at or below that particular federal poverty guideline level. And as an example, I mentioned before, household of 4 would be $60,000 or less. So something to keep in mind. Here's what you will be asked to share more information about your household. This is an example of there's a household of 1, and here we see that the income has to be at or below $29,160. If the person answers yes, then they can move to look at the right-hand column. And the next few screens I'm going to go quickly through because it kind of asks you the same information. So it'll tell you what document you need, what the document must include. You will get common examples. In this case, the person is using their income, so it's really good to read through that. I'll just pick on one. A Social Security statement of benefits would serve to verify your income, and then you have to upload a copy, which is how, and it gives you instructions on how to do that. That's where creating an account is important, because if you don't have the information on hand, you will go back and then upload any information that's needed. And again,
can I interject a comment there? Sorry,
Oh,
Keila.
sorry.
Just that I think it's important why us that help and serve the public be familiar with this so that we can communicate to them. Those are the sorts of things that they need when we're going through this, especially if we're going to be helping them in our offices or on, our public computers, so that they don't have to go back and forth. We deal with a lot of people who have transportation issues. So being able to communicate that, I think, is very important.
Yes, and to that point, thank you for that. And to that point, I would suggest, and I'm going to send a link out to that, there's what's called an acceptable documentations guide. So if all of you know ahead of time that, maybe I'm I'm going to a PTA and going to help sign consumers, or they're coming to my office. However you do it, ahead of time what the consumer needs and if what documents they should bring with them. And so that eliminates any wait time or having to come back. And it's really good to get to know all that information. And of course, as you see here, it's still asking people to share the person to share more information to see if they qualify. So sometimes a person, most of us don't carry last year's tax return form as an example with us. We may be able to access it online, but even then, most of us that's not something that we think about. But for consumers that are thinking about applying, using their income, it's good for them to know ahead of time that this is something they may need. So it's something to keep in mind. And also, one thing here that's really, really important. Sometimes you will see if more document or more information is necessary, the page all the way towards the bottom will tell you the deadline by when the information is needed. So in this example, by September 17th, the person has to complete the information that's missing. And if they don't, maybe it's September 18th and they just remember they had to do this, they'll have to fill out a new application. And what we're trying to do with these train the trainer sessions is let all of you know that, so that you're aware and that you can help the consumer not miss that deadline. So sometimes, for whatever reason, the national verifier cannot confirm someone's eligibility, and these I'll go through quickly also. So a good thing for you to know is that you will always see on the left-hand side a list of all the programs that qualify a household. And for some people that have asked, it's Medicaid, not Medicare, because we do get a lot of questions about that. And it's supplemental security income, oh my goodness, I always mix this up. I think it's called supplemental security disability income, SSDI. SSDI can be used if it is part of your income statement, but not as a qualifier for the program. So it's really important to know that one. Just like the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Some consumers have Medicare, it has to be Medicaid. But if they don't have Medicaid, but they have some other qualifier, that's what they really have to keep in mind. And again, you will always see on the right-hand side when you choose one of the qualifiers, what you need to have available. But again, the acceptable documentation guide has all of this in, I think it's about three pages, more or less. And of course, this will continue for many of the questions for each of the programs you'll see here. And I do want to stop on this one. So mentioned before, community eligibility provision schools. This is the benefit where the child receives, there's a child in the household that receives school lunch or school breakfast. This one's also important. It is in the acceptable documentations guide. A lot of parents we have heard from have said, but I had all my information, my child receives the benefit, and still asking for more information. Really important to read what the requirements are for this particular benefit qualifier. It's important to have a document that has everything here, and it must have the name of the school, a way to contact the school, which is either phone number, email is fine, and not the website. The website is not considered a way to contact the school, and a lot of parents have asked us about this. It has to have the child's name, and it actually has to say Timmy Smith does receive the school lunch or whatever they call it. Every school, sometimes schools rename it, but it has to have that in there. If any one of those things are missing, it's, even though you're handing all this information over, they will be considered incomplete. So it's something to keep in mind when you're working with schools. So this part here, there's a difference between this part and the paper application. In the paper application, it will have each of these as a box that needs to be initialed by the person, and then they sign. Here it's an electronic signature. This is the part where it's really important that if you're helping someone, they have to fill in this information themselves. You can, whether you're doing it paper or online, the person who is applying for the benefit has to sign. And they have to check off if they're doing the paper application. For this one, I always have consumers read through the whole thing because it's important that they understand what the benefit is, that they must recertify, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, that they have the right to look into their records at any time. But this is really important. I have worked with some consumers that have said that, that they really, it'll take them a long time to write or to type, and that's okay. I just let them sign because they are the ones receiving the benefit, not me. So again, you can help everyone up until this point. You can even read out loud to them. You can do that, but the signature must be typed in by them. So sometimes consumers get to the point where their documents are being reviewed, and this is what they'll see. It could take as little as 15 minutes or up to 2 days. And this is where creating an account becomes really important. The consumer will be able to go in and check the status of their application. I have done sign up events where the consumer does have 15 minutes to wait, and they can check back. And sometimes we get a great answer. Yes, they've been approved. Sometimes they'll just have to wait. If they want to, let's say, for example, they don't have access to a computer at home, then this is the information that you can share with them, which is towards the bottom of the screen. It is the USAC's toll-free number, that 877 number, and an email in case the person wants to email USAC, acpsupport@usac.org. This screen shows you something we all like to see. This is where the person has been approved for the benefit. And there are some really important things that consumers need to be aware of. They have, this is usually by when they have to contact a provider and sign up with them to receive the benefit. So in this case, it's November 1st. Next steps, it tells you if you already have internet, you can call your provider and let them know that you have been approved for the ACP benefit. And then you could talk with them about what the next steps are. Here's where consumer protections are really important. And I'll mention the next one, and then I'll go into the consumer protections. If they currently don't have internet, then there is this hyperlink that leads to the Companies Near Me tool. Companies Near Me tool is really great, but I'm going to go back to talk about the protections. Consumers, when they go to apply for the benefit and they've been approved, they have consumer protections in place for them. The Biggest protection is that the FCC does have a dedicated process for filing complaints for ACP. If they go online you could put in any browser FCC complaints and it'll lead you to our complaints page. At the top of the page, it'll ask you if this is an ACP complaint and you can fill it out. Consumers that don't have access to the internet can call 888-225-5322 and can file a complaint with us verbally. A provider cannot tell you, once you're calling a provider, they can't tell you, oh, you can't receive the benefit unless you sign up for a higher cost plan. Or the reverse is also true. The provider can't say, well, for you to receive the benefit, you're going to have to take a plan that costs X amount of dollars. And if it's less than your current plan and you don't want that lower cost plan, they cannot force you to do that. Provider can also say, well, we see you have a prior debt. If you have a prior debt, you could still get enrolled in the program, but you have to find a way as the consumer on your own, you have to find a way to settle that debt. But because you have a debt, they cannot deny you signing up for this benefit. There are other things too that are in place. If you as the consumer want to change a provider, you can do so after being 30 days with the provider. Please do not switch a provider after a week, but you do have the right to change to another provider that also offers the benefits. So these are all things that sometimes consumers are not aware of with this program. And of course, one of the things that also happens is a provider cannot ask you for additional money to enroll and to sign up for the benefit through them. So they can't say to you, well, of course we'll give you the benefit, but you have to pay $20. That is not the case. If somebody's asking you that, please report it to the FCC. So those are things that are important. Companies Near Me tool does help you find providers in your area using your 5-digit zip code or city and state. The great thing about the results is that you can see everybody in your area. You can see phone number, you can see the company, you can see who is offering that device that I mentioned before. And there are some providers that offer a plan at that $30, so it would be $0 to you. Please note that if the consumer says, great, I have the a $0 plan, that they may have to pay, depending what state you're in. If your state charges additional taxes and fees, the consumer is responsible for that, because the benefit does not cover additional taxes and fees. It's only up to $30 per month. And the other thing that's really important for consumers is the application ID number, which you see here. That serves as your confirmation number because a provider will ask you for that. So it's important to have. And then, of course, if you lose it, you can always contact USAC for that number. FCC, we do not have access to that information. And this page here is what it looks like when you go into the system after you've created your account, and it'll give you kind of an overview. For this consumer, if you look all the way on the bottom, it'll tell you what type of application, their application ID number, when they created the application, what the expiration date. Expiration date here means by what date they need to sign up with a provider, and then of course the status. And this is all great news because the person has been qualified to receive the benefit. We have a lot of information. You can always go to affordableconnectivity.gov. They have video demonstration, one video that tells you kind of how to apply. They have screenshots of for consumers that need it in their instructions. The online application instructions are available in English and 9 other languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Tagalog, and some others. You can always send an email to acpsupport@usac.org. ACP also, there's a Learn page that USAC manages, which has a lot of this information available. So it's always really good to have. And of course, anytime you need information, contact the Universal Service Administrative Company. You can always contact me at the FCC. So that's kind of an overview. And the one last thing I want to mention. So after a consumer is in this program for a year, they will receive information about recertifying. Now, if USAC can find them in the system, and let's say Kayla is a Medicaid recipient, her Medicaid card is current, they will recertify and I will not receive any information. But let's say I said I'm a Pell Grant recipient and my benefit is due and I still don't have my Pell Grant letter for the next school year, then USAC will contact me and will ask me for that information and they will give me a deadline. I believe that they give 60 days for a consumer to upload their information in the recertification process. Really important to keep that in mind because on day 61, if you don't recertify, you lose the benefit and we'll have to apply for it all over again. So that's kind of an overview. I am looking forward to answering any questions you may have.
Yeah, please. Thank you so much for all that great information and overview of things. Feel free, please, to put your questions in the chat. I will start us off with a few. I was taking some notes and had some questions. Let me get the slides back up here. There we go. Okay, so I'm kind of curious about let's just start kind of where you ended there about the length of the benefit. So you said it lasts for 60 days, right?
The benefit is for a year.
For a year.
Have,
okay.
Yes. And you have, if you get that letter for recertification, you have 60 days to recertify for the benefit.
I see. Okay. Okay. So, and then is that something that they could renew after 1 year if they're still theoretically eligible for it?
Yes. And USAC will either do it automatically, so you never see an email or a letter saying it's time for you to recertify. But if USAC cannot find you in the system, I gave the example of a Pell Grant. If it's not the current school year, they will not be able to find you in the system. And so you will get an email and a letter from USAC saying it's time to recertify and this is what we need. Got it.
Okay. I'm kind of curious, these days, internet service kind of bleeds into a lot of other services, network services from your cell provider and stuff. Is this specifically for internet providers? I'm not going to name any by name, but could you sign up for cell service that would provide you internet access?
So it has to be if I'm understanding correctly, and please let me know. So with this, it's specifically for internet, but that powers your cell phone. Cell phones are not part of this program.
Okay.
So you either get home internet or mobile internet, and it's exactly as it's defined. Home internet is just your home. Mobile you can carry with you. So you could be paying for the internet service that powers your phone, but also the internet service that powers your laptop, as an example. But phones are not part of this, and people do ask about phone service. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I just kind of like, as I said, it's my phone, I connect when I'm out and about. If I can't get on, a coffee shop's Wi-Fi, I'll use my phone's network in order to connect to my laptop or my, whatever thing I have with me. So I guess it was kind of where my question is. And you answered it, which is whether or not, beyond being able to make calls, if you can use this to pay for network services. Yeah, cool. I have a question here. Can you talk a little bit more about how this program works with the Lifeline? You mentioned having the same provider for both.
Yes. So if you are not familiar with the program, Lifeline has a benefit of $9.25. You do have to be eligible for Lifeline to receive it. And Lifeline is one of the benefits that you can also use to apply for ACP. The Lifeline, you have to be at or below 135% of the federal poverty guidelines. You do have to use your social security number. Less programs qualify you for Lifeline. So you can have supplemental security income, veterans pension, I believe federal housing assistance, and what is there's another one too, but those are more, and you can use Medicaid and SNAP. So things like WIC, Pell Grant, a school lunch program, already being in a provider's low-cost internet program, none of those will work for Lifeline.
Mm.
If you receive Lifeline and ACP, you can use it for the internet service. If you'd like, you could keep Lifeline for your phone and have ACP for your internet service. But in the case where you want to use it for both, it has to be from the same provider. This is where the Companies Near Me tool is really helpful. There are some providers that offer Lifeline. There's some providers that offer ACP. There's some providers that may offer both, and that's where you need to find the service. So for example, I work for the FCC, by the way, so I cannot mention any provider. We regulate them. So if I mention one, I have to mention all of them. But in this case, let's say you're receiving Lifeline from a provider named Tree, and you're getting the ACP benefit from Leaf. Tree and Leaf are not the same providers, so you can't have them both cover your internet costs. But let's say Tree does have Lifeline and ACP, then you can definitely use both providers to cover the internet. In that case, the provider first charges Lifeline from your monthly bill. That gets deducted first, and then the remainder of the cost for internet will be covered by ACP. So that's how it works. That's why sometimes some consumers may ask, well, why is my bill, why is it showing two different deductions? And that's when that happens. Again, Companies Near Me tool, if you just put Companies Near Me tool into any browser, will show you. You can look for ACP and Lifeline. Unfortunately, it doesn't let you look for providers for both at the same time. So you will have to, I did this for a consumer, that's why I remember this so well. So what we did was we checked for Lifeline first, wrote down the ones that the consumer wanted, because when I do this, I can't also tell you, oh, look, go for this provider, that provider. We can't do that. But I asked the consumer, look at the screen, tell me which ones you want. We wrote it down on a paper. Then we went and did ACP, and we were just looking for the ones that she wanted, see if they offered, and we were able to find a few. So, but it does take work on the consumer's behalf. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing these signups with consumers. Take time, make time available. I would suggest give each consumer at least 15 minutes, and maybe that's not even enough. If the consumer has a lot of questions, or if the consumer doesn't have an email address. Those are things to keep in mind when you're helping others. But that's a long way of saying, yes, you can have both. You must find a provider that offers both.
Thank you. They said thank you. That was very helpful. You had mentioned something also about under the protections about choosing your plan. And I just wanted to clarify. It sounds like a household, I'm going to use the correct terms here, a household can choose the plan that best suits the activity in their household. They're not going to be beholden either by the ACP or the provider forced into choosing a specific plan. Is that right?
That is correct. So I recommend consumers look ahead of time. If their current plan is working, they can definitely keep it. But maybe they want, and it's okay if the consumer says, I want a higher cost plan because it has this, this, and this, which will help me telework, which will help my children do homework online. That's fine. Or maybe it's a household of one and they have internet, and maybe they don't need all the bells and whistles that they currently have. They can definitely choose a lower cost plan. If they choose a plan that's less than the up to $30 a month benefit, they will only get coverage for the lesser amount. They don't get a refund for, let's say, $5 or anything like that. And that's, a lot of consumers have asked us about that, but no, it's up to the consumer what type of plan they want.
Gotcha. Yeah, you were right in my mind was at, of like, someone who might have kids at home having to do teleeducation, while they are working remotely, which obviously uses a lot of bandwidth. So it would be difficult for them to be stuck having to choose a lower plan. So yeah, there are many different situations. It's great that people can choose what works best for them. You had said something just now as well that I was going to follow up on, and it has slipped my mind. Sorry. Does anyone else have any questions? You can put them in the chat. Feel free to chime in if you want to. I think that this is a very important program. I know that dealing with internet companies can, for the best, in the best of circumstances, can be kind of a headache. So, that's what I was going to follow up on. If I just keep talking, eventually it comes back to me. You said they can't get refunds if the amount that they can receive is more than the cost of the plan. But say if they get the $30 and their plan comes out to, $25, will that cover the entire cost of that thing, or does it only cover up to a certain percentage?
If the plan is $25, and they will get the $25 because it's up to 30. So that additional $5 just doesn't factor into it because the plan is less.
Yeah, but so in that case, their entire monthly bill is covered because it falls underneath the.
I see what you're asking.
Yeah.
It'll cover the cost of the service.
Yeah.
But the consumer should definitely look, because there could be taxes and fees that the benefit does not cover, and that the consumer is responsible. So it could be, and I'm making this up, but it could be, oh yes, my plan is $25, it gets covered, and then every month I get charged 50 cents taxes.
Yeah.
The consumer is responsible for that 50 cents. That's why it's important for the consumer to look at the bill after they've been approved for the benefit, to see what, if anything, they have to cover.
So that's just, you're very clear about this. I'm just, asking the questions for everyone, the simple ones. It's just covering just the service, because I know that some providers have equipment rental fees, for modems and routers and stuff like that. That would not. It doesn't cover the full bill. It just covers the portion of it that is providing the service, the internet.
Yeah, and if they do have a router, let's say that it's still $25 and the router it is 10. There are a lot of providers where it does cover the equipment rentals, but if it's $10, you still have $5 there as a consumer that's not being covered.
Right.
The benefit's only up to 30. So it's important for the consumer to also look to see if there's something remaining. Now, if you have a $10 plan and the router's $5, you're going to get $15 covered, but still look for taxes and fees.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Always, I think that's good advice for anyone, to just always check your bills to make sure you know what exactly you're being charged for. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Just people saying thank you. This is great information, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here. If you don't mind, I'll just do a quick 2-minute outro to let people know that they can provide us feedback. Let us know how these information sessions are helpful to them, how we can improve. That is very essential for us shaping these topics in the future. So you can always leave us feedback at fse-corp.org/LL feedback, lunch and learn feedback. And you can follow us as we share resources like the ACP on all of our social media devices. We got to update that last one to X, not Twitter, as things are changing in the world. But I want to thank you, Kayla, for being here, for all the great information. This will be shared. And if you have any additional materials you would like us to share with everyone, especially the people who RSVP'd but couldn't be here, please provide those, and we will send those out with the follow-up tomorrow. So thank you so much. We hope that you all have a great afternoon. Enjoy your lunches, and we will hopefully see you next month. Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.